The Bulls are negotiating a 5-year deal with Iowa State coach Fred Hoiberg after firing Tom Thibodeau. Stephen A., what do you make of these moves by the Bulls front office?
I'm not impressed. I can be honest with you about that, and I'm a bit concerned. I would be a bit concerned if I were a Chicago Bulls fan, particularly if I was a citizen for the city of Chicago. Gar Forman is to be respected. The Taj Gibsons, the Jimmy Butlers, the Pau Gasols of the world, they're on that roster because of this man. He clearly knows a little something about what he's doing. Paxson has won championships with the Chicago Bulls. He obviously has presided over this organization for years. He's done a relatively good job. It hasn't been an abysmal job. But when you consider the history of the Chicago Bulls, meaning Jerry Reinsdorf's ownership and what has transpired in terms of his executives running the show and the cantankerous relationship they historically have with head coaches, it definitely is a bit alarming. We can sit there and look at the Tom Thibodeau situation all we want to in a vacuum. That's just not an accurate depiction of what's transpiring. Vinny Del Negro, there were problems with him and upper management before he departed. Scott Skiles wasn't perceived as having the greatest relationship in the world. Phil Jackson was being pushed out the door in the midst of winning championships. And essentially, so was Michael Jordan to some degree, unless the fans in the NBA community did not, just become ridiculously perturbed and agitated over how ridiculous a scenario that was. But this is a history associated with the Chicago Bulls that is simply inescapable. And what Jeff Van Gundy said about them as it pertains to their history of having problems, whether the Bulls like it or not, he was accurate. He was right on the money with what he said. So when you take that into consideration and you think about the fact that Phil Jackson once left and you replaced him with a Tim Floyd, and now Tom Thibodeau is leaving and you're talking about replacing him with Fred Hoiberg, an individual that's had 2 heart surgeries, for crying out loud, had open heart surgery just a few months ago. This guy, you're talking about him coaching 82 games in the NBA level in a city like Chicago. It just seems to be a bit shaky. I don't want to say foolish because it may end up being a good thing, but it definitely appears to be shaky, and it's very surprising that it's gotten to this point. One thing for Tom Thibodeau to be gone. It's another thing entirely for you to be looking to bring in a college coach. Seems like they're more interested in bringing in somebody that they could control as opposed to somebody who's actually the best man for the job. I'm not knocking Fred Hoiberg. I don't know him, and I know Gar Forman and Paxson are to be respected. But they have to respect the fact that because of how things have transpired, this is how it looks.